All right. I hear him in the background talking to somebody, trying to get some issues straightened out. Are we all here? Not yet. Oh, I love technology.
Ernie, do you have any idea how many people will be on?
There's Mr. Morris, Mr. Diefendorfer, Mr. Smith, Catherine Royer.
Ernie.
We all here? All right, everybody. Welcome. The irregular town council meeting of the town of Cave Creek, Arizona, Monday, May 4th, 2020. Roll, please. I actually have no sound.
Councilmember Royer. Here. Councilmember Morris.
Present.
Councilmember McGuire.
Oh, I'm not. Okay, I'm unmuted. Okay, so they can hear me. All right, that was what mattered.
Vice Mayor Smith.
But I'm not hearing anybody else.
Councilmember Diefendorfer.
Here.
Councilmember Clancy. Mayor Bunch.
Here. I was muted and could not hear y'all. Were y'all here?
We are missing Councilmember McGuire and Councilmember Clancy.
Apparently not everyone's Wi-Fi is as fast as we might need.
You are unmuted by the host, okay?
Yep, I hear you, Tom.
Okay. I've just got a little part of you over on the right side of the screen.
Who, me?
Yeah, now I see Jane, but nothing on the whole screen. The host asked you to start your video. Okay. Come down here, start my video.
There you are.
Okay.
There you are.
Okay. Most of the screen has the logo. I just see some people over on the right.
Yep, that's what I'm looking at, Tom.
Okay, the guy.
Swipe left.
All right, so we've got everyone except Councilwoman Clancy, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
We have her now? Not yet, okay. I'll be glad when this is over and we can actually do this the right way.
We haven't yet.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do the pledge. And once again, this week I will to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We can officially start the meeting now. We've done the important announcements. The governor today has begun to slowly open the state back up, and earlier this morning, before any of that, we came up with a third proclamation for myself, where we're withdrawing and no longer looking at anything other than what the governor is doing. Having said that, did we have any emails for call to the public? And I'm not seeing any.
No, sir.
Pardon?
No calls to the public.
Okay, town manager report.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. We're waiting for a slide to be put up on the screen.
Got it.
Okay.
There we go.
All right, now I gotta be able to read it. I'm moving my photos around. I thought it would be helpful to to show where we are in terms of the current fiscal year revenues that have come in compared to what we have budgeted. There's been a lot of information from the state and other cities and towns about their concern over the loss of revenues stemming from the COVID-19 quarantine and the businesses being closed. But Cave Creek is a little bit unique in that we have continued retail, and we've had a good bit of construction sales tax this year due to the projects that are underway and continue to build. So if you look at the slide for on the left-hand side, the sales tax, so we have general fund, which does not include the construction. Oops, something flipped on my screen here. So we have budgeted $8 million in revenue. When you look at the sales taxes for general fund, the construction sales tax, Spur Cross 2% sales tax, and the wastewater sales tax. But through April 30th, these aren't posted yet with journal entries into our reports, but as of April 30th, the funds that we've received this fiscal year are $8.2 million total. And that's not all of our revenue, but that's the majority of the large revenues that we receive. So we are at 103% revenues, 3% over our budgeted amount for this fiscal year through April 30th. Now, we do expect to continue to receive revenues in May and June, and should they be down overall in a percentage, and we'll do a comparison and get into that as we go through the work session next week regarding the next year's fiscal year budget. But we anticipate the revenues to continue to come in, and so we have had the funds to cover our current expenditures. And we've been watching this closely, and we've looked at the projects and made sure that funding has been available for the projects this fiscal year. So I thought this would kind of put people at ease going into the budget for next fiscal year, knowing that we're on track. We're not in the hole for this year, starting out next fiscal year in the hole. So I just thought this might be helpful and provide some insight prior to the work session next Monday, May 11th. And that's all I have for right now.
All right. I guess we're ready to move on. Get my book out here. Don't want to mess with it. Oh, here we go. Presentation to council by Carrie Porter Brace, Executive Director of the Cave Creek Museum, on the activities in the museum. Like we've got a PowerPoint to go along with this.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can, Carrie.
Yes.
Good evening.
Great. Thank you so very, very much for inviting me tonight. I've got a PowerPoint loaded, but I'm not seeing it yet on your screen. There it is. Okay.
It looks
All
familiar.
right. Yeah, yep, that is. Uh-huh. All right. Shall I wait till it loads full screen, or there it goes? Yeah. And I've got it simultaneous at home on one of my laptops here, so I can keep track of it as we page through. Hi, Paul.
Hello.
All right. So thank you very, very much for entertaining a presentation and proposition from the Cave Creek Museum tonight. We know that over the last few months it's been kind of interesting, and I know that several members of the board have been aware of some of the efforts we've made over the last program year. So let me get that one started. Do I click on it, or do you folks click on it for to advance the slides? There we go. The Cave Creek Museum, we preserve and interpret the natural history and the cultural heritage of the Northern Sonoran Desert. And that when we talk about that, that puts us in a cultural geographic environment. There was a question as to why we had changed our mission a couple years ago. We wanted to include the natural history in it as well as the cultural heritage and within the Northern Sonoran Desert, because when people travel to Phoenix and come north to see us, they travel through this amazing desert. And there's a lot of very unique characteristics about that the geology and the natural history that made people want to be there. So I wanted to put that a little bit into context. Next slide, please. We've celebrated 50 years this year. We are certified by the Arizona Historical Society. Again, we preserve the region's cultural heritage, local archaeology, and historic archive. We attempt to promote better understanding and good stewardship of our region's natural resources, and we sponsor educational programs that appeal to a broad audience addressing important local issues. So next slide, please. All right, next slide. Do I click or do you click?
Uh-oh. Did we go too far?
There it is. There we go. All right. Well, I have a slide that shows the Golden Reef Stamp Mill, which is certainly from the Cave Creek Mining District. There you are. Yep. And our dream team has reassembled that over the last 10 years. Paul is a member of that. There's several members of the council and folks who work with the town of Cave Creek who've been involved in our dream team. This year, we're going to take that area and we're talking about adding an outdoor exhibit on the mines in the area. And we've rearranged our industrial heritage yard. We've rebuilt one of the Cave Creek well drilling rigs that we've had in our collections. And there's a hope that we're going to be building a gold panning station out in our museum campus for the children. Okay, next slide. It should be the TB cabin. There you go. Yep. The Desmount Sanatorium Tuberculosis Cabin dates from the early 20th century. It's the last in the state. I'm sure you folks have heard these stories before, but we really do want to really promote these points of pride. I don't think there's any other freestanding tubercular cabins in the state. We do know there are bits and pieces of them around town, because when they were ceased to be used, they were turned into office buildings, chicken coops, small apartments, etc. And we just happen to have the last one, and it is National Register, which is a real point of pride. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, next slide there. The historic church and the gazebo. Some folks would ask why we celebrate the gazebo. Well, at 50 years, you're considered an antique. And that is certainly the case for the town's gazebo there. It was built in 1970. And we have a Boy Scout who's interested in making that an Eagle Scout effort this fall. And of course, the church, everyone knows about the little church that went from Assembly of God to the Episcopals to the Black Mountain Church of Christ. And we have those exhibits inside the church, as well as use the space for meetings and weddings. We had a wedding here last week, just a couple eloping. It was a small group, but they still wanted to have a wedding in our chapel. Next slide, please. Do I do that or do you do that? Oh, there we go. That little historic church was our first museum building. And there was a little bit of an extension on the back. I don't know if you can see that in the slide, but yeah, there were all kinds of exhibits in that structure. And now, of course, we have the building dating from 1986 to 2003. Yes, right there. It has the 2 wings, the central auditorium, the administrative offices, and around the campus in the back, the stamp mill, the tramway, the industrial heritage yard, the gazebo, the church, the tubercular cabin, and then all surrounded with botanical gardens. So we're trying to develop everything we can to appeal to visitors to our area and to remind everyone that this is the natural history and cultural heritage of the Desert Foothills region that we preserve. Okay, and next slide. Okay, next slide. There we go. We provide valuable services to residents and visitors alike. We convey our unique hometown stories and cultural values. We educate lifelong learners of the historic, ecological, and archaeological wonders of the northern Sonoran Desert. We've got one of the nicest archaeological ceramic collections in the area. Many people, after touring the archaeological wing, often comment about how that's nicer than the archaeological displays in the Herd Museum. Now, we understand the mission of the Herd to be living Native American people, but yeah, we're very, very proud when we hear folks comment on that. Next slide. All right, this last year, we were lucky enough to work with Gary Jones to do a retrospective on his architectural designs. He has homes throughout Cave Creek, Carefree, North Scottsdale, Paradise Valley, and it was certainly a draw. And the events that we had around this exhibit and programming were very successful this year. We had about 600 people go through the home tour, which was, you might have seen the buses and attended some of the lectures. We were very, very fortunate to bring all this together. Next slide, please. Our educational and arts program for 2019 through 2020 celebrated Gary, of course, but we also had Taliesin architects Michael Johnson, Nick Mancusi, Ada Rose Mancusi, Jeff Graham, and Cynthia Godinez present for one of our Kiwanis Family Sundays. The second Sundays are the Kiwanis Family Sundays, as we have renamed them. Their topics range from historical events, desert wildlife safety, pioneer experiences, Arizona archaeology, mining history, and Native American rock art. So we have plans to do that, more Kiwanis programming in the year to come, and we want to talk about that after we explain our proposal for this year. Okay. All right, next slide. School tours, group tours, local and regional meeting venue, professional workshops, informative seminars. We host the Act One Culture Pass, which brings in library card holders from all over the valley. Anyone who is in a Phoenix public library system has access to these culture passes. We've had quite a few folks come up to see the building and grounds and serves children and families. So it's a wonderful thing to be a part of. The Desert Foothills Library also has passes that you can check out there at the library. I've had folks come from as far away as Tempe, Mesa, Glendale, Buckeye, wherever there's a Phoenix public library. Next slide, please. Okay. All right. Just to give you a sense of the attraction that museums have and the impact they made in socioeconomic circles, we help people understand, debate environmental challenges. They enhance the quality of life by breaking down barriers to access and inclusion. Museums support over 726,000 jobs in the United States. and employ directly 372,100 people, more than double that of professional sports industry, and they contribute $50 billion to the US economy annually. So recent studies, for every $100 of economic activity created by museums, an additional 220 are generated in other sectors. If you can imagine, if somebody comes up to see the museum, they go to lunch, they shop at Frontier Town, they tour around Cave Creek. It's a great way to combine our economic and cultural destinations. This year, Arizona museums contributed almost $936 million financial impact to the state economy alone. All right, so the moment we've all been waiting for is our prime objective for 2021. Our new 2020 exhibits are the Pioneer Wing renovation, celebrating 150 years of Cave Creek history in Arizona's transition from territory to state. And we're going to be covering mining, ranching, the healthcare, specifically the tubercular cabin, the environment of the Northern Sonoran Desert, the enterprises that have grown in Cave Creek over the last 150 years, and of course the entertainment.
Sent you an email.
And let me see what I've got for the next slide. Next slide, please. All right, so what I will go back and I'll go into a little bit more specific details on our wing renovation. Earlier this year, we discovered there was a fault in one of our water lines causing us to have some repairs done. We have already received the insurance settlement for the renovation on the damage caused by the water. We'll be undertaking that very soon. What we're seeking from other agencies, municipalities, from you, from the National Endowment for the Humanities, just recently, the Arizona Humanities Council and APS, we're looking for support to enhance these exhibits beyond what they have been now. We're going to take the format similar to our archaeology wing, where the exhibits are sleeker around the exterior of the room, along the perimeter of the room, and they'll have better didactics, better images. We'll be showing off our collections a lot more aesthetically. We're going to take a 21st century exhibit approach to that. We'd like to figure out how to integrate modern technology, and with the coronavirus situation, we specifically have to look into the types of interactive technology that don't require children touching things. So it might be motion sensor, it might be a foot enacted kind of interactivity. We're hoping to talk to a lot of folks more familiar with this new technology and perhaps a new approach to exhibit interactivity so we can best approach how to do this safely. So there's a National Endowment for Humanities grant that I've written just this last week explaining how we're going to have to investigate this, and we're going to have to rethink, we can't necessarily use, say, iPad tablets, because if people are touching it, then that puts folks at risk. So we're having to investigate different kinds of technology as interactive exhibits in the new wing, because we're concerned about keeping things safe. So right now there is we've been approved to move forward with the Arizona Humanities Council on our project grant for implementation in October and November. That will help with installation of exhibits. We are moving forward with funds that we've raised already with our year-end campaign. We raised $21,000 with the matching funds from 2019 year-end. And we've also received money from our insurance company to help with the renovation of the gallery. So there'll be money that's already in our coffers that will be directed to the renovation plans. And then what we're hoping to do is make sure that when we reopen in October, November, in the fall, that we've got some new exhibits already in and more coming. It's going to be a rolling, a season of rolling events, because we're going to be having some exhibits already in and some that will be implemented under the Arizona Humanities Council grants. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Very good luck with your grant. I'm glad to see that you're seeking money elsewhere.
Oh yeah, there's probably at least 25,000 in consideration right now. We received a PPP grant to support our staff through the end of this fiscal year. So, and we've had a remarkably successful home tour. Now, the questions coming from our stakeholders is, how do we continue and repeat that success and keep it moving forward? So we've just had a board election, and we're moving forward with Suzanne Johnson and Bob Flash as co-presidents, and Vince Delicio from Carefree as vice president, and we'll be soliciting new members of the board for moving forward into fiscal year 2021.
Carrie, this is Catherine Royer. Thank you for your presentation. I know you're working very diligently to keep the museum a successful endeavor and keep it moving forward. And
yes,
we appreciate that very much. Your professionalism is really recognized by this council, and your hard work is paying off, I think, in spades.
thank you.
You're welcome. And I know Suzanne, and she speaks very highly of you. And I do have just a few questions. I was looking through your website, and I was trying to investigate who some of your other board members were. And I noticed that they're not listed on the website, and I was curious as to why.
Is that in our About page or in our, it may be in transition because we just had an election, so I apologize if you can't find that.
Yeah, it wasn't on there, nor were any staff members. So I was just going to suggest that would be a good addition if you're updating the website at all in the near future.
Oh yes, website is constantly updating.
And also, in terms of who your donors are, if Cave Creek continues to be one of them, it seemed to me that we would be on that page as a community supporter, given the amount. Because we're not.
Oh, you're in oh yeah, we will absolutely add you. And you were in the annual report. I don't know if that page is still active with the annual report from 2018, 2019. So yeah, you were listed front and center on that. I'm wondering if since we've been making additions to our annual report information, if that page has changed. So.
I didn't notice the annual report. Perhaps that was my oversight. I just looked at all the community supporters.
Yep.
Because that's really front and center. You have quite a few of them, and that's a positive to identify who your local supporters are.
What you may be seeing, Catherine, is this is a community program that was started by Steve Woods and Tech for Life. It's kind of a reciprocal arrangement between local businesses and the museum. What they do is they offer discounts and coupons. Like if you were to click on the website, you go to the Horny Toad, you can get a free shortcake.
I saw that. Or there's a 2-for-1 stuff.
Yep.
But in terms of generating additional financial support, if other donors saw that you have significant contributors coming from my background in both nonprofit, corporate, and governmental contributions and foundations, they like to see who else gives.
Yes.
And I would think that would be a positive. I'm not coming from an egomaniacal town perspective. I just think that other donors would like to see who else supports the museum. So it might be a benefit for your organization.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. I believe Steve Woods is actually in tech support for tonight's meeting, so I'm sure he heard that. So we'll probably be on that this
Yeah.
week.
And then lastly, I'm not sure about your budget, how transparent you are in terms of, is it on the website? I did not see it. I don't know what your annual budget is and where your funds are allocated. For instance, is this money that you're requesting from us, will it go for programmatic expenses or is it for operations? I'm not sure if that matters at this point to our council. Obviously, you have a lot going on, and the museum can't operate without a staff to do it all. I understand that. But again, transparency is important, especially for government, where it allocates taxpayer dollars. And so if it's possible, at least I would think Carrie and the staff should have a copy of your budget if we ever get audited.
Catherine,
Do we have that?
last year's proposed budget should be on the website. If you go to, I believe it's in the About section, there is a long oblong bar that says see our annual report. I don't know if you can get it from
Well, we don't have to take the time right now. As long as it's on there.
Will be up there by the end
on
of
there,
May.
Carrie, and it's easy to find, and that our town has a copy of it
Yes.
along with your request. I just think it's important that you know, it's all transparent, and that if
Yes.
anybody ever wanted to know
Yeah,
where
that's-
your
that's
money is
live.
going,
Yeah.
we would know.
Yeah,
We'd be able to-
the budget is on the website. It's a green bar definite directly underneath the board members listing, which is there also. Steve, you're right. Steve is here and he's showing me on his phone the stuff that's there.
Thank you.
Yeah, probably need a little more.
I could not find it. I looked.
Yeah, a little more looking.
I looked.
All
several
right.
times. Thank you, Carrie.
You're welcome. Yeah. And be aware that what we're doing to be more accessible during the time that over the summer, for example, when we're typically not open anyway, but in this last month that we were closed, we're beefing up our online resources. We're going to be opening up a Google Classroom. We've put a lot more on the Facebook and Instagram pages just to try to make sure people don't forget us. The one thing I keep kicking myself about is if any of you seen the little videos of the penguins walking through the shed aquarium. And the only thing I wish was that we had something cute to walk through the museum to attract more attention. So maybe we'll find a mascot over the summer to walk through the museum and take videos.
All right. We're going to move on to number 2 here, which is presentation to council on the fire outlook for calendar year 2020. And I'm assuming that Mr. Baxley is around here somewhere. I don't see him on here.
I'm here, Mayor.
Let's see.
I am getting ready to share a screen here. And okay. So taking a look at the fire prevention outlook for this next year, first thing that we show here is what is looking like for the Southwest United States. And I'm going to draw a little marker on here, kind of give you an idea of where we're at. And so if you'll take a look in May, we're showing an area right here, which is going to include Cave Creek, Central Arizona, which is telling that we're basically going to have a exceptionally high outlook for potential fire danger. And that's due to all of the moisture we had this winter. It produced a lot of great green grasses and a lot of beautiful vistas for us. But as it dried out, all those fine fuels came to bear. And it's looking like for the Southwest United States, we're right in the middle of the hot spot of our fire danger. Looking into June, we have the same thing. We're still going to be right in the middle of our hot fire season. And I didn't put it in our actual presentation, but it does show for the forecast models looking into late July, it tends to move away as we move into our monsoon season. So that's going to be helpful for us long term. Giving you an idea of what we currently are looking at, all those rains that we had this winter that everybody was happy about now has what we are looking at is just the typical Sonoran desert right now. And you can see all the grass that was out there that grew up and starting to turn brown. And so that, as we get hotter, is going to continue to create more fuel for us to move forward and contend with. One of the biggest issues right now, and has been for the last couple of years, is the stink net. As everybody is aware, you know, we had all these green bushes floating around here just a month ago with all the little yellow flowers on them. Everybody liked to take pictures of them and they looked wonderful, but man, when they turned brown and dried up, they went really quick. And stink net is an invasive species, and it's best that we try and eradicate this because it is an absolute fire danger. It's akin to basically like gasoline out there. It's elevated, it's dry, and on the 3-point triangle for when we're talking about fire, you have to have a heat source, you have to have oxygen, and you have to have the fuel. Well, with this being elevated, it allows for enhanced oxygen in there, and it really, really burns well. So because of that, we have our current fire danger here in Cave Creek has been recently elevated to high. You can see that at both ends of town. We have a sign that's placard out there and tells what our current fire danger level is. Cave Creek uses a total of 5 different fire danger settings, moving from low all the way to very high, and then on up to extreme. Last summer, we managed to be up in the extreme level. Currently, we're sitting at very high, but I would expect as the heat continues to climb and we continue to have a lack of moisture, that you'd see this elevated here in the very near future to something that is going to be more like very high. And hopefully we don't get there, but if not, we'll be at extreme. So what is it that Cave Creek is doing right now? Well, currently we have a letter that has been crafted, and it goes out to every single contractor and homeowner who comes and gets a permit. And basically it's asking them to, before they start their project, to make sure that they have defensible space around their project, that we have you know, all of anything that's flammable been removed from the area, that the trees are trimmed up, and that that way they won't cause any undue burden on the community by starting a fire and letting it get away from them during their project. We also have letters to homeowners associations that is going out, and it's asking them to be part of the community. And you know, they have vast amounts of land out there that they have control over in their open space and green belts and those kinds of things, and within their communities. And what we're asking them to do is get out there and try and eradicate at least at a minimum some of that stink net, slow down any opportunities where we're going to have fires that would burn through the community. And then lastly, what we have done is we have a new website format, and we've updated that information on the website on what you can do and where to find more information on how to help during this wildfire season. And with that, we have our utility director, Sean Cruz-Weissner, who's going to speak about our fire hydrant distribution and the status of the fire hydrants within the community.
Thanks, Mike. Mayor Council, can everybody hear me?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this slide you're seeing right now was a screenshot done actually a few weeks ago when we were just starting off our fire inspection program with an outside contractor we're going to use. the town sort of does two programs. One we do annually with, for the hydrants located within Carefree. We work with Rural Metro because they're the fire marshal in Carefree. But this year we actually kicked off, we actually brought an outside vendor in to actually look at all of our hydrants in our system. And you can see that listing that we have on the side of the table. We had the red hydrants were what we had found at the time, active hydrants. Gray were inactive, out of service. There was 2 at the time we started this, 2 that we knew about. Yellow being private, and then under construction is the purple. You can sort of see the line up there in Cahaba Springs. We have not accepted those pieces of infrastructure, but we want to account for them so we don't lose track of them. And then there's a little cluster up by Continental Mountain Ranch in the upper right-hand corner of the map. So again, just over a month or so ago when we put this together, we had 568 hydrants that we knew about. At this point, the number has grown up to 573. And that's part of the exercise with our consultant was to actually map this out. So our goal was to help us update our inventory and make sure that we understood where things are, and then also identify deficiencies that we could work on those. So the current active number is 522. We actually had 6 out of service as of last week. And I want to highlight that right now because 3 of those 6 are now back in service as of today. Staff actually replaced 1 last week as part of an advance of a paving project, and then 2 today we actually went out and we found the isolation valves and we opened them up, and we can't see an issue why they were taken out of service. We couldn't find a note, so we're going to watch those 2 to see if we have a problem. So again, of the 6 that we had out of service just after we started the inspections, 3 are in service, and the other 3 we're looking to get a contractor out just because of staff resources to repair them. In addition to that, we have a number of other deficiencies that we're trying to work on. Our contractor noted things like a frozen stem, which didn't correspond with the out of service hydrants. So we got to get those repaired. There were some where the steamer is too low. About 47 of our hydrants are what's called steamer too low. The hydrant itself is too low into the ground. So we have an opportunity to either raise that hydrant or actually regrade around it just to make sure that they can operate the hydrant effectively. They can spin the caps off, the side caps off. You're supposed to have 18 inches of clearance. So in some cases, it's just a matter of regrading the area directly around it to make that. So I'm happy to note that of all the hydrants we had, 419 had no deficiencies. That's 77%. So now our focus, now that we have our to-do list, is our goal is to work out there and see what we can do, work with the vendor who did the inspection work can actually do some of the maintenance work. Or if the significant work's required, we can actually subcontract that out and do larger scopes of work with contractors who can do that more efficiently. But that is an active goal for us. And obviously, with the fire season here, we're keen to keep this project going. And it has been successful. We're just wrapping up some re-inspections right now. But I think overall, we've learned a lot about the system and we've corrected some deficiencies, and we'll continue to do that. So with that, I'll pass it back to Mike.
Thank you, Sean. So with this fire season, we're already starting to see some fires, some local ones and regional ones. I mean, we all saw the news and we heard about the stage fire that's currently at about 90% containment as of this morning. The last update that I received on that shows that they were at about 284 acres burned. That's a significant fire, and that's just right outside of us at I-17 and New River. Closer to home, a couple of weeks ago, we had a fire here in Rancho Mañana that burned about 2 acres, and that fire actually wound up threatening 7 homes. A couple of the homes, flames were within a couple feet of that house, and it was able to, Rural Metro was able to beat that fire back and take care of it. So looking forward, what happens when we have a wildfire? Well, Rural Metro is our first responder when it comes to fire services. And whenever a call comes in, Rural Metro's initial response for a brush fire, they mobilize 1 engine out of Cave Creek. They also have a brush truck out of the Cave Creek station and a water tender that comes out of Cave Creek. And then they also send their engine out of Carefree. They also have an ambulance, which is staffed by firefighters who can serve a dual role, a battalion chief and a district chief, which that's their initial rollout on a fire. Once they see what they're up against, they can call in a first alarm through the mutual aid, and a brush assignment will automatically roll up an additional 5 engines, 4 brush trucks, 2 water tenders, 3 command officers to manage the scene, a shift commander, a command van, a safety officer rehab unit, and a canteen unit. Why is that important? Because what it's telling us is as soon as the first alarm brush assignment goes out, on scene, we will have a minimum of 6 engines and 5 brush trucks and 3 water tenders to fight that fire. Additional resources are available to rural Metro. As they see fit, they can call in and, basically the valley starts moving towards us with emergency services if the fire is big enough. Similar to what happened last week with Daisy Mountain and out there at the stage fire this weekend with the stage fire. They were able to get significant resources on that fire fairly quick. So what can the public do to help right now? I mean, where we're looking at is for the public to take some ownership. You got to help protect your own assets, which is probably the most valuable asset you have is your home. And we have a link on our website to NFPA.org, which has a piece about talking about how to prepare your homes for the wildfire. And when we're looking at this, it has 3 zones that are thrown in here. You have your immediate zone, which is right around your house, your main structure right here. And that immediate zone is from 0 to 5 feet from your structure. What should you do in there? Well, you should try and remove all flammables that are in there. You should make sure that if you have screens on your house, that they are actually in good repair, they don't have holes in them. That if you've got roofing material that's bad, you want to make sure that that's taken care of. So if sparks do fly during a fire, they don't embed in the house and light your house on fire. We don't have very many raised decks out here in Cave Creek, but the ones that we do, you want to make sure that you don't have any debris up underneath that deck. And so that way it too won't catch on fire due to a fire approaching your residence. Then the next area that we're going to take a look at is from that 5-foot area right here out to about 30 feet on your property. And we call that the intermediate zone. And in the intermediate zone, what you want to do is we want to make sure that if you have grass in there, whether it's native or even lawn within your backyard or something, we want to keep that to a minimum or a maximum height of about 4 inches. So during fire season, we want to keep it down so that way it doesn't have that great fine fuel to help a fire approaching the house advance too fast. And then also in this area, you want to keep your trees trimmed up a little bit. You don't want those branches hanging all the way down to the ground. You want to keep them trimmed up so that way if the fire does come through, it doesn't light the entire tree on fire and create a bigger hazard. And then lastly is the area from 30 feet all the way out to 100 feet and beyond, to be quite honest. Some of our properties go much further than that. If you don't have 100 feet out to your property line, then your property line, please do not go out and start taking on your neighbor's property. They might get upset because they have different ideas about what they want to do with their property. But you should defend your own. And in this area, what we want to do is you want to pick up all of the loose material. If you have litter or debris out there, you want to get it removed from your property. So that way you won't have undue hazard. In addition to that, we want to take a look at your tree spacing. Tree spacing should be between 6 and 12 feet apart. If you have clumps of trees that are grown together and everything, it's just even a bigger fire hazard if a wildland fire did come through there. And then last but not least, if you have outbuildings such as a garage or even kids' playground equipment that may be out there, you want to clean up around that area too. So that way we don't have ability for those to catch on fire and burn. So with that, if there's more information that we have, the town has their updated website. And if you go and look at the under services in building and fire safety, you'll see a lot of information in there about how to defend your home and things that you can do, and also best practices for taking care of the stink net or the globe chamomile. And with that, Mayor and Council, I'll be more than happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Mike, while we're on here, one of the things with the stink net is if it's not cut down and not in small pieces laying on the ground, according to Chief Kratz, the flame heights are 5 to 6 feet. And if it's chopped down and laying on the ground, then it's only about 12 to 18 inches. So flame heights are a big issue with our mesquites and our native trees and that type of stuff. And then the other thing is, I over the years, whenever we've bought new water trucks the town has, I've requested that we get the fittings that are where they'll be able to take water to the firefighters to supplement what they've got with the tenders. And I assume that our trucks have those fittings on them now. So in the case that they're on site and need more water, our staff will be able to help them with that. Is that accurate?
We do have the ability to fill their trucks. We can do it with a hose and through the top of them. A direct connection isn't necessarily how they work, as they run off a threaded connection that they are tying into the engine. So we have the ability to fill into a tender.
Okay, because I thought that some of the water trucks at one time had that threaded connection that went right to their equipment.
That comes from that's a hose end. Is what we're doing.
Yep. Okay. Anything else from council?
Well, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it.
We're on to. I'll go ahead and flip this screen back to you guys, so you don't have to look at us.
All right. Sound like a winner. Looks like we're good. All right. We're on to number 3, which is presentation to council, case A-20-01, chapter 2, section 2.4-1, outdoor lighting provisions. And I believe we're going to get to hear from Mr. Kotzman at this point.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, members of council. I'll just go ahead and report on these next 2 cases together. I'll tell you why. Chapter 2 is the residential zones chapter of our zoning ordinance, while chapter 3 is the commercial zones chapter of the ordinance. The outdoor lighting provisions are pretty much the same in both chapters of the ordinance. So just the changes will effectively mirror each other. Just a little bit of background, going back to when the town processed entitlements for the Walmart project, I remember Ian and myself talking to Walmart's lighting engineer, and they were just completely befuddled as to why the town would only permit light poles 10 feet in height. When they explained to us how light actually works, they basically reasoned that if they could do just 5 additional feet on the light pole and have a 15-foot tall light pole, they could use half as many light standards on the property. That got us thinking, and here we are a good 12 years later, proposing some of these amendments to the zoning ordinance to bring us back up to technological advancements in lighting. Last year, it was suggested to staff to incorporate the measurement of lumens within the outdoor lighting provisions. And these cases address outdoor lighting in residential zones and commercial zones. It's important to note that none of these revisions proposed lessen the current restrictions that the town of Cave Creek has, such as the requirement that all outdoor lighting be fully shielded and cast downward so that the light source or bulb is not clearly visible from an adjacent property or street. All building mounted exterior light fixtures shall be mounted at a height not greater than 10 feet measured from grade to the top of the fixture. Only motion sensor security lighting, which is fully shielded, shall be allowed. And also dusk to dawn lights are prohibited. Light trespass beyond the property line is also prohibited in all zoning districts. So this is something that we've had in effect really since we began considering outdoor lighting in the town's own zoning ordinance. So we're not proposing lessening the restrictions on these core tenets, if you will, of our outdoor lighting ordinance. The last thing to note, and that this really doesn't have anything to do with the zoning ordinance because the ordinance doesn't govern the use of town rights of way. The town does not have nor intends to install streetlights. So that's another thing about the town that is going to keep us darker than a lot of our neighbors. So the one thing that, you know, in my discussions with various council members and various members of the public over the last year plus in looking at this, you know, going back to meeting with IDA in July of last year and touring the town in the evening, it's clear that Cave Creek is a desirable place to live, and we see many new folks moving here. A lot of times these people may bring with them attitudes that may be in contradiction to the restrictions found in the zoning ordinance, unfortunately. You know, I'm still surprised to hear a new resident tell me that they removed all the native shrubs because they thought they were weeds, or someone say they didn't think they needed a permit for a garage because they don't need a permit in Montana, or that they thought Washingtonia palms were native because they're everywhere in Phoenix and Scottsdale. I've heard all three of those comments more often than I would care to admit. But so what we really need to focus on is, you know, it's clear that a reasonable ordinance doesn't guarantee that people will respect or even read it or know that it exists. So it becomes our job to educate our residents and to some degree local realtors of the values of our community. That's evidenced through our codes and ordinances. And that all starts from the general plan on down. What do we want the community to look like? And how do we interact with our community in terms of the natural landscape, dark skies, all of those things. So the town's website and social media are good resources, but those are passive in terms of the reach. You know, we need to do, it'd be good to do maybe an unofficial audit, drive around town at night again. Like I said, I did that last year with the IDA gentleman and a couple members of the community, and just kind of get an idea, a sense of, are we compliant with what we've had on the books? Will we remain compliant with the technological terms that we've introduced into the zoning ordinance? And what steps beyond that, you know, what necessary steps would we want to consider to further gain overall compliance with respect to not just our outdoor lighting, but everything. I mean, that's the goal, and you'll never get 100% compliance. The goal is to get an understanding that a vast majority do comply with and respect the rules that we've put in place, and we're doing it for a bigger, broader reason than just being heavy-handed. That's not our goal. So I can briefly tell you the one thing I did notice in your agenda on pages, let me get to it here. Pages 211 and pages 211 and page 341 of 355, there are typos in the red lines. That should be, we've got it right in the parentheses, but the right part is 375. The wrong part is the spelled out in front of it. I believe it says 600 maybe in your packet. That should read 375. So we'll update in the packet that you received for May 18th. I did want to note the Planning Commission heard this case on March 12th and voted unanimously 6-0 to approve the amendments as presented to you this evening. And with that, I will answer any questions that you may have. This is a discussion, so first reading would be on the May 18th agenda. I can give a more detailed presentation. There's a few things that I would also include at that time. We went through and did a side-by-side comparison of other model lighting ordinances. In the packet, you'll also see Fountain Hills, which was the last community to become IDA certified in their ordinance. Once again, you'll see correspondence between the town, myself, and IDA. And that's where we're at. Thank you, Mayor.
Luke, let me, you're talking about IDA. There was some move in the community to move that direction. Would this get us there?
Mayor, members of council, unfortunately, based on the last review that IDA conducted, when we reached out to them in February, earlier this year, they said we were about 20% of the way in terms of becoming IDA certified, which is a little bit awkward because their previous representative last year was quoted as being almost there, very close to being there. So
Without streetlights, how can that be?
Isn't that because they increased their requirements? They made them more stringent, Luke?
Mayor, members of Councilwoman Roy, yes, all of the communities, including Fountain Hills, which was the last to acquire certification, were under an old MLO, model lighting ordinance. They've since updated it and are requiring any new community that wishes to become certified to comply with that. So in your packet in Exhibit B, you'll find the MLO from the IDA. You'll find Fountain Hills outdoor lighting ordinance. And if you look across the three documents, ours included, you'd see that we are more restrictive, which is a shame because the MLO from IDA would allow us to do is have a certain degree of unshielded light in the town. And that goes against the kind of the core tenet of our ordinance is that all outdoor lighting shall be fully shielded and cast downward. So when you start looking at those little changes and nuances, and that's what they want us to adopt in order to become a dark sky certifiable community, it's strange to me.
So they moved the goalpost.
Very, very good term. Yes.
Okay. Councilman
It would appear
Diefendorfer,
so, yes.
Yeah. Councilman Diefendorfer, you had your looking to be.
Yeah, the red line error also exists on page 34, that same one, just so you to catch that one also.
Right, yeah, this packet, it gave you everything up in the front for discussion that you're gonna get on May 18th. So I was just focused on the back
Okay.
end that you're gonna see again on, but thank you, yes.
Anything else from council?
Yes, that's Bob Morris. I think, Luke, your comments about new people moving in, I think the lighting is one of the most violated things that people bring with them from outside. And I rather than jumping to enforcement, I'd like to see the town move to effectiveness. When someone moves to town, and even residents have been here for a long time, if they don't know these codes, I think that is a opportunity for the town to reduce conflict between neighbors, to reduce the number of complaints, and to darken the skies too. So I would like to see the town kind of include the lighting, the landscape, along with all the good information that's been coming out about the COVID and about the fire safety. Voluntary compliance is always far, far preferred. And I'd like to see the town just have a set a goal of having the town residents very aware of what these codes say and how they can comply with them.
I have suggested to Carrie that we might have a sign as people enter town saying something like, "We value our dark skies," and then in small print to get the specifics about our ordinances, get in touch with staff. But that way, when somebody is driving into town, they're going to see that every time when they come into town.
Okay. Vice Mayor, did you have your hand up?
Yes, I did.
Where did the cat go?
Pardon?
Where did the cat go?
I smacked it and it I love the cat, but you know, it's always trying to intrude on my life. Luke, I noticed in your back and forth comments between you and Adam Dalton that there were some areas where there was some substantial deviation, or not deviation, but failure to coexist in the same universe of what would be desired by IDA and what is actually in our ordinances. One of the little things I thought was kind of glaring is where they would like the lights off in businesses, what is it, an hour or after
Sunset.
sunset? Whereas we essentially say, when the folks go home that work there, turn the lights off. To me, that's a big difference. And there are a lot of other instances there where there are similar differences. And it also concerned me that I don't know whether the Fountain Hills has lost its certification, but it certainly doesn't sound like it can keep its certification since it does not meet the 2018 guidelines, which I believe are substantially more stringent. Is that the case?
Well, I don't know what the future holds for Fountain Hills. I've got my hands full enough with what the future holds tomorrow for me here in my house. But the Fountain Hills, I believe, began the process of certification in and around 2015-16. In December of 2019, which is the ordinance from Fountain Hills that you have, they amended and updated their outdoor lighting, and it doesn't have anything about the amortization period that we're required to put in, requiring all businesses and residents to come into compliance within 10 years of becoming certified. It allows an effort to reduce, and I may be paraphrasing a little bit, but by the greatest extent possible, reduce light trespass. It allows a certain level of unshielded light on the property. So a number of things where, and once again, what you read into the conversation between myself and Mr. Dalton is pretty clear. At some point, I think I just flat out asked them, Cave Creek has all of these great things that make us more restrictive in many cases than anything that the MLO has today or yesterday, anything that Fountain Hills has, which is your most recent, certified community. So how can we not even be considered? I mean, I believe in their estimation when they went down, I included their grade sheets that he wrote, does not comply or does not have. And they're all kind of, at the end of the day, shield your lights, don't leave them on all night, and don't point it off the property. I mean, those are kind of the core tenets of our ordinance. And beyond that, I don't know what else we would necessarily need to incorporate into our ordinance to make us more dark, if that's...
Excuse me, can I interject?
Yes.
On the point about, I'm calling it the sunset clause. I was reading the emails between Tom McGuire and Adam Dalton on Wednesday, March 4th. And Adam Dalton seems to clarify, and this is on page 318 of 355, the whole sunset clause. So you're agreeing that he clarifies that isn't true.
Correct. He states that that's a typo in their MLO.
Right, that he left it out. The clause should read, sign illumination shall be extinguished completely 1 hour after sunset and remain off until 1 hour before sunrise or after business closing time. Therefore, businesses which are open after sunset and or before sunrise are indeed eligible to utilize illuminated signage as long as they are operating. For example, a 24-hour business would be allowed to use an illuminated sign 24 hours of the day if it remains open the entire time. So, that.
And as one commission member stated, that's a very long typo.
No, right, but just, to clarify that's
Right.
an erroneous point, that they have to shut their lights off at dusk.
When the Planning Commission looked at their website, it stated on their website that all the lighting should be off within 1 hour after sunset. I think that was what it was. And they pointed out, well, this is straight from your website. And they, at the time I looked at it, it's still on the website. They had not altered that, unfortunately. But
You need to, just
yeah.
like I found on the website of the museum what I couldn't find. So websites sometimes are hard to navigate,
Right.
and have errors.
And I had correspondence with Bill regarding the what we usually call grandfathering, and they insist that at the end of 10 years, all of the lighting must be brought into compliance. And it's my understanding in corresponding with Bill that if there is non-compliant lighting and the owner does not make a significant change, he can change the light bulbs, etc. But he's not changing basically what the lighting is, that we cannot impose upon that owner that the owner has to change that. Bill, can you speak to that?
Can you hear me now? I'm not used to this.
I can.
Yeah.
What Tom is referring to is the non-conforming use rights in Arizona. Arizona really does respect property rights. What that law says is if I'm a property owner and I have a use, and you as a government try to constrain that use, you will have to honor my rights. Having said that, though, there are ways they could lose it by inactivity, by substantial changing. But having said that, and I see the marshal on this, I've seen, if you really want to get around it, you can trump non-conforming use rights via nuisance statutes. For example, when the White Sox were thinking about moving into Glendale, they didn't. And so what Glendale was thinking about doing is addressing nuisances. So a nuisance law would overcome a non-conforming use right, but it's a pretty high standard to bring a nuisance claim. Bottom line is right. In Arizona, if you don't change your rights, you can keep your rights. You're not really being offensive to your neighbors that rise to the level of a nuisance.
And Mayor, if I can just, for the benefit of the council, Exhibit F in your packet for this case is substantial kind of above and beyond research and correspondence that Councilman McGuire conducted, on his own with IDA, getting, the letter, the correspondence between he and Bill Sims is in that as well. So there's further additional background information from Councilman McGuire's correspondence with IDA, a separate representative than I've been dealing with. So that's in there as well.
With regard to the ways in which we are more restrictive than the IDA suggested wording, it's my understanding that they want that wording that they have. So at first I thought, well, if we go above and beyond what they want, surely they would be satisfied. But that doesn't seem to be the case. So what seems to be the case is that no, you have to say it this way. And this is why Luke is saying, no, if we truly conform to ADA requirements, we would have to back off some of our restrictions to lighting.
Correct. That is correct.
Okay, any other questions? I let this get a little far afield.
Sorry.
No, I'd just like to compliment Luke. I think, Luke, you did a really great job doing, especially the comparisons of the town of Cave Creek versus the IDA minimum requirements. I think it was very thorough and very understandable for laymen, especially. I also read all of the minutes from the Plan Commission meeting on March 12th. I was glad to see that Bruce and Bob were both there and they were able to provide some input. I'm sure they're not exactly happy with the outcome, but I would highly recommend that we continue to have conversations with them as well as others who are proponents of IDA. I would hate to shut them out because they're important members of our community and they are passionate about it, and whether or not we can move forward is questionable. But they're still our community members and they're still valuable and their opinions matter. And so with that, Bernie, back at you.
Yeah. All right. Seeing no more, we'll move on to number 5, which is presentation to council, the quarterly utility report for fiscal year 2019-20, followed by council comments and questions. Sean's got to be here somewhere. I see his name, but not his picture. Oh, there he is.
Hiding here. So let's see if I can share my screen here properly. Let me do this. Share screen. Okay, I'm gonna make this full screen here real quick. Okay. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Apologize. This is, we're catching up for, we missed the last quarter and we're almost into this one. I apologize in advance that, we need to get more diligent about this. With staff resources being a little low, it's been hard to keep up with it, but we're going to try to be harder with, to give you this information. Do this. So let's start by going over the water treatment that we've provided. This is the graph of what we've provided from our water treatment plant, our CAP allocation that's been treated. You can see the 3 trend lines, orange being 2018, red being 2019, and the beginning of 2020 being the blue. A couple things to point out there that we did see in the third quarter of 2019 an increase in flow. That's actually when we actually had our well go down in Desert Hills. We actually had to supplement it from Cave Creek. And then another nuance happened in the fourth quarter of 2019. The flows didn't come down as quick as we expected. We actually found a leak on a 6-inch water line crossing Cave Creek Wash. The line itself was over, I think, about 12 feet deep. So it didn't surface for quite a while. So we watched the flows and we couldn't figure out why it wasn't going down. And we finally, it did reach daylight because of the sandy conditions out there. We couldn't see it. We attributed a lot of flow loss for that break that occurred. And beginning of 2020 here, we seem to be trending a little bit higher than normal. Again, this is our CAP allocation, what we treat at the water treatment plant. And that can be partly explained by the fact that we actually have a well out of service in Desert Hills right now. So it's referred to as our Galvin well. I'll speak to it a little bit later. So we are sending a little bit more water to Desert Hills than we anticipated. This is sort of a stack graph showing similar information. This one specifically for 2019. And you can see one nuance here is the red disappeared at the end of June. That was actually the portion of the CAP allocation that we treated and delivered to Carefree inside of their jurisdictional boundary, to their distribution system. So since the end of June, we've only been treating the town CAP allocation for ourselves for both Desert Hills and for Cave Creek. You can see the trend there. The next one's a little more telling. Again, we've been, the percentage has gone up considerably because of that well being down. And for some reason, we can't explain totally, the flows in Desert Hills seem to have risen quicker than the flows in Cave Creek, the main distribution system. So we would see more flow go through the interconnect than we anticipated with just the one well being down. But that's something we're going to closely monitor. These are the flows from the effluent meter at the wastewater treatment plant. And I'll point out, I didn't realize until I saw this graphic just a while ago, the last quarter of 2019 was not there. When I looked at the numbers, they trended very similarly. Similar to our water treatment plant, we're showing the orange was 2018 flows. The blue line is 2019, and you see 2020, the green line. You can see the spike in February, March of 2020. That was attributed to the large storm events that we had and the inflow and infiltration that we had in our collection system. So I'll speak about it a little bit later, but we actually do have the assessment study going on to try and reduce that in the future and identify the areas that we need to focus on to tighten up our sewer system. This is our, what we don't call our non-billed water, our water that gets sent out into the system, but it's not going through a meter. So this, the red being the amount of water that got flushed through hydrants or other exercises, and then we have water leaks is the blue. So what you're seeing at large last year, the large spike in August is actually, wasn't hydrant flushing. What it was actually us bringing the Joy Ranch and 3rd Avenue well and Desert Hill back online. So this is a combined, so this is actually for Cave Creek and Desert Hills. So we had to flush quite a lot of water to get that well to clean up before we brought it back into production after it was out and we put the new well motor into it. And then the large leak in December is attributed to the 6-inch water line I talked about that broke in Cave Creek Wash. Again, being due to the sandy soil conditions, we did not see it surface for a while, and because there was natural water in the water course, it didn't expose itself right away. You can see the first quarter of 2020 here. February, March, we had some hydrant flushing activities going on. That coincides with the our maintenance program. So we had with Rural Metro, we inspect the fire hydrants that are in Cave Creek or Carefree's portion of the system. And then we actually had our own contractor out there. So we're doing a little more flushing than we typically would through our hydrants, but that was due to annual maintenance. And here's a trend with Rancho Manana. And these are the amount of water sent to the plant. I'm actually going to skip over this slide because I think that actually the next two show more information for council. And the stack graph is a little bit better. So as of the beginning of last year, the town actually started metering the overflow. So for the next time I do this, I'll do a graphic, but we have 2 pipelines that actually go into the lakes at the north end of the golf course. So there's 3 lakes. 2 pipelines that go into the top lake and then they cascade down to lower lake. And the lower lake is where Rancho Manana actually draws off for the irrigation use. So we have a pipeline that comes from the CAP canal / the water treatment plant. So it's the top end of the 16-inch line, but we can actually feed it with raw cap water, or we can feed it with reclaimed water from the water treatment plant from the process. We also have a separate pipeline, 8-inch pipeline that comes all the way up from the town's wastewater treatment plant. But in the lower lake where they draw off the water, there actually is an overflow that goes down to the wash. So what happens is during periods when they're not using it, or during the wintertime when it's wet, when they didn't need to take the water, we're still delivering them the water. Again, if it's not raw cap water, because we only did that a little bit last summer to supplement when their demand was high, but the reclaimed water from the treatment plant and the effluent from the wastewater treatment plant, you can sort of see that towards the end, that the amount of overflow of the lake got large. And I do that in the weekly reports so you can see those numbers, but here it is trended on a monthly basis. And I think the first quarter of 2020 is sort of the trend. If I'd continue to stack once more into April, it would have dropped off. So the overflow is stopping as they've increased their irrigation demand. But having this year's worth of data allows us to go have a conversation with Rancho Manana, because I understand previously that flow wasn't being monitored and there was a question on how much was being lost to the wash with discussions with them. But now we have, I think, a good year's worth of data. And again, with the wet winter times, it made sense that, again, they couldn't consume the water. They didn't need it. Temperatures were down, but we were still producing water. The treatment plant is still having to do its backwash cycles. And so the water then overflowed the structure itself. And it's just another way of looking at it again, sort of a stack, which is really looking at, we refer to it right now as non-revenue water at this point in this format. So we have the metered water that we're sending up to the golf course in the blue lines, 2018, 2019. And then we have the readings, the RM meter readings are the data set that they give us for billing purposes. So in their irrigation pump station, they have a meter and they give us that data set. And you can see the non-revenue water. Again, we've got better data in 2019 because we were capturing the overflow value, which we didn't in 2018. So you can see a pretty large jump in the amount of acre feet. That's because we are now monitoring that flow when we didn't previously. I'll jump from water resources into our grease trap system, our collection system. This is the fourth quarter of 2019. Explain the graph quickly. Usually the grease traps, they're functionally designed so that when they're 25% full of suspended solids, either floating or settled material, then they're not considered efficient. So that's where we set the limit at 25%. You can see in the one red line here that pokes up above it. So we only had one site that exceeded 25% capacity when the staff did their monthly inspections. That site was notified by staff, and they corrected that within the 7 days. So there's no other issues to be resolved. We came looking at this when we did the first quarter 2020. You'll see a bunch of properties actually exceeded. We're attributing that to the fact that as the economy slowed down, everything, the kitchens were still open. I think people just in reality forgot about the grease traps. So once we notified them of the issue, it was corrected. But I think just because of just everybody being busy with everything going on, it sort of fell to the bottom. But we were obviously, it's something important for our collection system, because if that material does pass the grease trap itself, it ends up in our collection line. So again, all the lines that went above did correct once notified by staff within 7 days, which is the requirement of our statute. With that, I'll talk about some of the major CIP projects that we have on the go. And this is just an overview of the Paul membrane units that we have running now since end of October, beginning of November at our water treatment plant. It's become a very cramped site, but it seems to be working. The staff seem to be very efficient with running a system. So again, they start operating in November. So that's a large project for us. We do have an interconnect project and treatment evaluation. So the staff entered into a contract with council's permission with Black and Beach. So that's looking at two things. It's, we brought the Paul membranes on last year to meet a specific need, the treatment technique, which required us to put out notification letters. It's allowed us not to have to do that anymore, but now Black and Beach study is looking at the ultimate treatment technique that the town is best, most cost efficient, and 20-year present worth for the town, as well as the IGA that we were able to put in place last year with the city of Phoenix to allow us to have an interconnect to their system. And what they're doing right now at the project is actually modeling what that interconnect would look like, since the location, it would be Cave Creek Road and Carefree Highway. Bring it into a site, but then how would we backfeed the system that way? And they're working on updating our water model, which was last updated in 2013 with newer data sets, so that we can actually run the scenario to see how far into the system we can get that effectively. The skate upright project is actively moving ahead. Council may recall that we issued a two-phase construction contract, one with Quantum Engineering, who did the original design, and they'll continue doing the programming component of the upgrades, and then Felix Construction with a job order contract to actually do the physical construction. So our goal is by the end of this fiscal year, we'll have updated most of Desert Hills. I think we might have one site that'll flip over into the next fiscal year, but we'll have the base system updated. And then we'll actually have the wastewater treatment plant, the software updates done there, and the hardware updates done there, and the water treatment plant. So the focus next year will actually be on starting the remote sites. And then we have 12 months of remote water sites, and then we wrap that up with just a final few catch-up sites. So it's moving ahead, and I'm excited about getting that wrapped up and then getting us onto a unified SCADA platform for the town. And SCADA is their supervisory control and data acquisition. So it's our program that allows us to see and to actually remotely control our sites. We still have the large project is the CAP booster station upgrades. Council remembers we've done acquisitions on what we call the CAP 4 site and the CAP 2 site, which is a lease at this point with State Land Department, and we're working with the CAP 3 site, which is actually a property that's a remnant property owned by Maricopa County Department of Transportation. We anticipate bringing that forward to council next month for that purchase. They've given us an appraised value, and we're finishing up environmental study reports on that right now. And then once that's done, we'll kick off detailed design. And our next step, we'll probably look to bring in a construction manager at risk to allow us to bring a contractor on board early to get their input on value engineering, cost effectiveness of the project moving forward, make sure that we do it as effectively as we can. It's a large project for the town. We do have in Desert Hills a pipeline replacement project. We've been talking with Maricopa County Department of Transportation on improvements that they're making on 20th Street north of Cloud Road. We're looking to clean up some stuff in the infrastructure there. There was a project on 14th Street Booster Station. That's actually where the first site that the water from Cave Creek comes into. And some of the improvements were not part of the larger Scager project, but we're actually including that with the scope of work and getting that wrapped up. And non-CIP project we did, I mentioned it, is our Galvin well. So last year, the town had the issue with what we refer to as the Joy Ranch and 3rd Avenue well. And that happened in the middle of summer. So Galvin well went out in November. The well motor burnt up. What we found out is that at the pumping rate that we were pumping it out 120 gallons a minute, the drawdown in the aquifer was so much that it actually went down below the pump motor, the bowls, and burnt out the motor. So we took our time with this one. We're about to wrap it back up. We cleaned it, we tested it. There's an obstruction in the casing, but we're gonna have to come back at it again in the fall probably, but we're gonna just bid out the replacement of the motor and pump. Came in at $25,000, so we won't need a council action. But we hope to, in the next 2 weeks, have that well back in operation. So we again had to lower the capacity from 120 to 80 gallons per minute just because of the stress in the aquifer in that area. The assessment of the town's collection system is underway. They're doing the final field work for phase 1. That should be wrapping up this week, and then we'll have a project report from them. Phase 1 being the initial review. They're popping every manhole, looking in them. They're doing a sonic test to find obstructions. They actually did find a couple of sections that had issues with it. We actually went out with staff and cleaned the blockage. We found a section of pipe that actually had a lot of gravel in it. We're not sure how the gravel got into it. So what we'll probably do when the funds come available next year is get a video camera into that and see if there's something else, or if it was just in an area. It is an area that there was a lot of construction activity. So I'm wondering if a manhole got left open and material was dumped into it. But it did prove out the fact that, yeah, the ultrasonic testing, sonar testing that they're doing actually was effective in finding a deficiency. The manhole rehabilitation program, we're just holding that off until the collection system program highlights what we should be going after. And we've been spending a fair amount of time at the Rancho Manana lift station. As I tell staff, I've had, in my year here, I've had too many sleepless nights at that lift station. So that isn't a priority for us. So we've actually completed some interior piping upgrades to the wet well itself. We've actually made a connection point. So if necessary, we can bring in an outside pump and completely bypass the site. And then we've had to replace one electrical motor starter that burnt out. And we're looking to, we've actually cleaned the site up a little bit. The berm that was behind it, we've helped with the help of our public works staff, removed a portion of that berm. That gives us room to actually put an odor control unit at the site itself. And we've actually just issued a small contract with a vendor who's going to add a new pump level control. And that seems to be one of the issues out there. So we've gained pumping capacity with these improvements, including rebuilding some of the pumps to factory specifications. I think in one case, we've gained almost 40% of the pumping capacity back. And that's ongoing. And the next thing would be getting the level control. So the pumps come on when they're supposed to. That seems to be one of the issues that we're having out there. The other ongoing issue is we're still having a problem with ragging at this site. So it's gone to the point where our staff are out there pretty much daily removing rags that are floating on top. What they do is they do impede the floats. They get wrapped around the floats and the floats don't work. So the staff are out there having to physically remove it from the wet well at this point. So we're hoping that that goes away once people are not staying at home all the time. We went to council last fall with a contract. We did a proper purchase contract for air release valves. So these are valves on pipelines that all pipelines, they're moving liquids will have entrained air in them. They collect at the high spots. The air wants to collect at high spots, and it ends up becoming constriction. So we've actually got the vendor. They actually started today going in and starting to work on the 8-inch force main from Rancho Manana lift station and the 8-inch effluent line that comes up from the treatment plant, replacing the air release valves. And then after that, they'll start working on some repairs for the CAP raw water pipeline north of Carefree Highway. So it was interesting. The vendor, as they came in today and they opened up the one location, they could hear a lot of venting of air while they're opening it up. So I think we did have some entrained air to get out of the pipeline. So that should help us add efficiency. Projects are ongoing. It's slowed down a little bit because of the coronavirus, is because of the scanning of our as-built drawings. The scanning company actually had to limit the number of people in the areas could physically be by the scanner unit, so it slowed us down. And At this point, we're almost caught up with all the scans and then digitizing them and adding the line work to our system. So now it's going to be up to staff on exercise to fill in the gaps where we didn't have an as-built drawing. We're gonna have to go out and probably do some field work to figure out what side of the line or what side of the road line is and fill that in. But we're learning every day. We seem to learn a little bit more about the system itself. We did do a PRV, stands for pressure reducing valve and control valve assessment. We brought a vendor in this last quarter to go look at all our valves. It's similar to our air release valves. These are almost, I'd say almost, well, they're more important than the air relief valves, but they almost act as, the pressure reducing valves are almost as important as our booster pump stations. Because the way our system is situated, we pump through our NERI site into the downtown core into our pipelines. Then we actually use a number of, there's actually 3 sets of pressure reducing valves that get that water to our western edge and also to our connection with Desert Hills. So if those sites aren't working, then we're inefficient. We actually had an issue the other day where one was blocked open because of a rock in the system. We got that out. So we actually had a little bit of a pressure spike because of that. But the vendor noted several sites that we should be working on. So it's another list that we're going to be starting to work down and bring in as staff can get to them, or more so as we can get a contractor to help us do that. And as I alluded to at the presentation with Mike, is that, you know, we've been doing fire hydrant maintenance. That's, I think, another key thing for us to work on, sort of a core function. We're cleaning up the inventory and then also, you know, touching them. Had several people who have called us and asked us, why is my hydrant painted? Well, that sort of was the symbology that the vendor used. If they didn't paint the hydrant, there was a deficiency, something that we need to correct. This indicated about over 75% of the hydrants had no issues with them. So most of them have been touched and painted and they look nice and shiny in the system. Those that aren't, we have something to do with. So that we'll start working on that corrective list, starting with the ones that are out of service and then working down priorities to make sure that the systems can support any fire events as best they can. I forgot how many projects we got ongoing. We've got repairs going on at the wastewater treatment plant. We've got the contract. The vendor should be delivering material, we believe, next week for the tertiary cloche filters, and we'll actually get those rebuilt for us. We have the pump maintenance. So at the wastewater treatment plant, the lift stations themselves, most of the pumps are actually from one vendor. That must have been a decision point when the town both built a new plant and then upgraded the lift stations, those being flight pumps. So we brought in the manufacturer's rep and pulled every pump and looked at them and changed the oils, changed anything that needed to be done. We had a few that looked like they might not have ever been serviced, but we're just working our way through it. We have a couple that we have lifting mechanisms that are broken. So we're just working our way down through the list to make sure that we've done the preventative maintenance on these units to make sure they can be serviced and produce what they're supposed to be doing. At the wastewater treatment plant, we also repair some lighting. So we actually did talk to Luke before we finished this project off, but we noticed that there's a low mass lighting over the aeration basins and then also around the building itself. And we actually had an incident the other, about a month or so ago that I was out there with staff on a Saturday night, something had happened in the plant. And we noticed as the dusk went, the light went down, we were in pitch dark. And that's not a safe place to be working in that situation. So we've replaced those lights. They're currently on a photocell system, but it's I think greatly enhances the safety at the treatment plant, getting that done. Before I end with any questions, I did do a slide, and I apologize for that, as I do have some information on will serve letters to pass along to council. And I apologize because I didn't combine today, and I'll have to break them out the next quarter. So in the last quarter of 2019, between Desert Hills and Cape Creek, we received 31 submittals for will serve letters. We issued 13 approvals, and there's 9 to be sorted still. We're still asking for information. It seems like it's gone on for a long time in a couple of cases, but we're asking the people to give us information about lot splits and other such things. Of the 13 that were approved, 8 were from old entitlements, so things, developments that already had lots and water allocations to them. So there wasn't that many new ones approved, and we're still trying to process through some of them. In the first quarter of 2020, we received 23 submittals, 9 approvals have gone out, One is still being processed. So we're still got a backlog from last quarter of, and only 3 of the approvals from this last quarter were actually from old entitlements. We had 6 new ones. So we saw a little bit of an uptick at the end of 2019. It slowed down a little bit. But yeah, we're still seeing requests for adding service, and I'd say it's a little bit more based towards Desert Hills at this point from just what I've seen cross my desk than it is towards the Cave Creek system. But we'll have that information broken down in a little bit more detail for you next time. I apologize not having that as a slide in the reports. And with that, I've been talking for a while, so I want to know if you guys have any questions or if I can pass this along.
Councilman Morris?
Yeah, how did you know?
Because it's water and wastewater. Come on, give me a break.
Well, this isn't a question. This is a comment. I did work similar to this for many years, and I don't think I've ever seen an organization having to touch every single thing out in the field all at once. I think there's just an astounding amount of work being done. And Sean, I want to compliment you. There's an astounding amount of professionalism and competence being shown. I'm a tough critic, but I have nothing to criticize. I think you're doing a fine job here.
Thank you. I'll pass along to staff because they're the ones doing the work. I push the paper.
Vice Mayor?
Sean, I was looking at page 172, the Rancho Mañana Golf Course delivery totals. And I noticed that the reclaimed water is still about 200 acre feet a year that's going to Rancho Mañana. And I was wondering if I had thought for some reason that the Paul membrane plant would be able to reduce that amount of reclaimed water that had to be sent over to Rancho. Am I incorrect, or is it something that eventually will have a mitigating effect?
Yeah, you're correct. Initially, the project was designed as something that was going to be, let me go back one too far. The goal of putting some membrane units out there at the water treatment plant was to try and recapture some of that backwash water, is actually what we refer to it at the plant, and send that back into the headworks for treatment and potable use. With the Paul membranes, because the way they work and the way our pipeline delivery system works, they're not working as efficiently as they would if we had a brand new plant. We're running what we refer to as a hybrid plant. So we actually are running the existing Trident units as well as the Paul membranes. And the Paul membranes, they don't like a constant flow place, which is what our pipeline delivers. They like a constant pressure. So for us to get that pressure to work, we're actually having to bleed some water back into the reclaim pit was the best alternative that we could come up with. So we have inefficiency that we're aware of. That's one of the things Black and Beach is looking at, if there's a way to improve that and or to identify what our future scenario would be. Right now, we're about 11% of the water coming to the plant is being wasted, which is a little bit of a reduction from previously. But we were hoping for more substantial, but it's partly going back to the problem of how the plant is being laid out with this temporary layout that we have.
Okay. Thank you.
You got your hand up?
I do. Yeah. If you go back to 172, what the Vice Mayor was looking at, it's pretty clear that during the summer we have to supply raw cap water to the golf course. Now I know, they are entitled to a certain amount of water. There is a discrepancy because we produce the most wastewater in the winter when we have our snowbirds. They need the most water in the summer, and we have to make up the difference. One difficulty there is that I think some of that water that is going in there in the summer is lost to seepage. If we've got excess water, that's not a problem. But over the summer, we don't have excess water. So if there's something that we can do to reduce the seepage, that would be desirable. Am I correct in looking at the graphs?
Yes, you are. And there's a seepage and evaporation in the summer months, and the evaporation you can calculate. There's annual numbers you can use based on just evaporation in our area. We can go even further and do what's called an evaporative pan study out there to get a true number. But I think, from my understanding, the last time the conversation occurred with the town of Rancho Mañana is over a year ago. And the one thing they brought up is, well, you're sending a lot of water over that weir structure during the winter months, and that's not being captured. So that was an unknown. Well, we have that unknown now quantified, so it's worth having that discussion with them again, saying, well, now we know the numbers. We have a pretty good idea, or a much better idea of what's actually being lost in the process between evaporation and seepage. And get that conversation going again with the golf course. It's their lake structures, so it's not for the town to go and do an evaluation on those liners. It'd be up for them, but we need to sort of push them that direction, that's something they want to spend money on.
And whatever we can do to reduce the amount of raw cap water going in there is something that we really should try to do. We know we've got a limited amount of CAP water, and it's going to be very important to preserve that.
Yeah, we do charge them for that CAP water, and last year we were diligent, but as soon as they started their getting the grass conversion over, we just couldn't keep up with it, and the lake was actually down until the end of October. Their irrigation lake was down because of that. We just can't deliver the water that they're anticipating when they want it. Yeah.
Anything else? Any other council members?
Nope.
Yeah, all right. I'm not seeing everybody, but
Mr. Mayor?
yes.
Gary, I just wanted to announce that Sean just passed his first year anniversary with the town of Cave Creek, and so I think he's a keeper. He's done a lot of work in a year.
Congratulations.
Yeah, we should have brought a cake.
What Carrie didn't say is, am I off probation yet?
We haven't had time to do your review, but I said I think you're a keeper. That gives you a hint.
No, I've enjoyed it. It's been a lot, but it's been a good challenge.
Yeah, very good, Sean. Don't let us burn you out.
Right.
All right, we're going to move on then to council review of the May 18th, 2020 draft agenda, followed by discussion. And see if I can find it here. There we go.
Page 186, I think.
Yeah, 187 where we actually get to it. And the first one, agenda item number 1 is going to be the lighting stuff that Luke went over with us. 1 and 2 both are residential lighting, as is 3, as is 4, and then we're on to adjournment. Any questions on what Luke presented to us earlier?
No.
I have one comment. One of the things that I think I picked up from the IDA and talking with them is that the incursion upon the dark skies is not simply the amount of light that we're producing, but the color of the light that we're producing. And within their guidelines, they say that we shouldn't be producing light greater than 4,000 degrees Kelvin. And that has to do with the color of the light. And I have a bulb here from APS, and it says down at the bottom there that this bulb is 2,700 K. So it would be compliant. But if you go above 3,000, that's the point at which you're going to have the most problems with the dark skies.
Okay. Anything else on the future agenda? All right, guys, we're back to tonight. We have a consent agenda. which is approval of the April 20th, 2020 regular council meeting minutes. We have a motion.
So moved.
All right. Uh-oh, where'd everybody go? Do we have a second?
Yeah, second.
All right. So Jane, go ahead, and since we can't see everybody and we want everybody to count tonight, let's go through a roll call on that.
Mayor Bunch, there is one correction on line 153 of the minutes. I had typed in none as far as council questions, and then there were a few questions. So we're going to just remove.
Uh-oh, you just went away.
The vote is Councilmember Morris.
Are we voting on the agenda approval? Would that change? We're not
The
hearing.
minutes. On the minutes for April 20 with that removal. Yes, sir.
Aye.
Councilmember McGuire.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Diefendorfer.
Yes.
Councilmember Clancy.
That was a head nod up and down. Can we not hear
Councilmember
her?
Royer.
Oh, she's muted.
Yes.
Mayor Bunch.
You want me to say yes or just nod? Yes. All right, 7-0 motion carries. Then we have one general agenda item on here tonight, which is council consideration and possible approval of a community grant to the Cave Creek Museum for the amount of $10,000. As I understand it, that is in the budget. Uh-oh, Jane's gonna, it says placed on the agenda by Deputy Town Clerk, and we can't hear you.
I apologize, Mayor. I had muted. Yes, it is in the budget. There's a agenda request form there that explains the budget. I believe is 20,000, and nothing has been expended at this time.
All right. Questions from council?
I just like to clarify that I did find the information on the website. It was kind of hidden.
That green bar.
Well, no, it was hidden under about. I would, if I was the website designer, have made it much more clear, but I found it, and so it's there. And I will take a better look at it at another time. I wished I could have read it more thoroughly before the fact, but I'll go ahead and vote in favor when we get to the vote.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve a community grant in the amount of $10,000 to the Cave Creek Museum.
All right. Second. All right. Comments, Councilman?
They're a true gem, and I think it's a good thing to do.
Yeah. Councilman McGuire, you have the second?
Yes, I quite agree.
Okay.
I think it's an asset to the community.
Yeah, I'll make a comment. I think if we forget where we've been from, we won't know where we need to go. So the museum is a real good asset for the community. This is financial, so let's do a roll call on that. Does anybody else want to say something? I saw Susan wave her hand. She's muted though. You're muted, Susan. All right.
Roll call.
Is Susan, wait a minute, is Susan going to speak? Because I have one last comment.
Oh, no, go ahead, Catherine.
No, you're probably sick of hearing from me. I'm sorry. I do have an opinion though on these grants in general. And I've said it to Carrie before, and if I'm reelected, I would like to see us have a better process for reviewing these grants. I think that they should have a better vetting process. I don't think that we have a process at all for reading a proposal, for looking at their budgets, for having an organized fashion at all, a fair process for looking at other nonprofits in our town, for having it done all at one time by perhaps others in our community. I would like to see it reorganized. I would like to take that on if I'm reelected. I just know it can be done better. And that's something I have to say.
All right, any other council members? All right, go ahead, Jane, with the roll call, please.
McGuire,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Diefendorfer,
Yes.
Councilmember Clancy,
She nodded yes.
Councilmember, thank you, sir. Councilmember Royer,
Yes.
Councilmember Morris,
Yes.
Mayor Bunch,
Yes, by 7-0, motion carries.
Mr. Mayor,
And
Mr.
now-
Mayor, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Can the public see when Susan answers? Is that being streamed so the public can see her nod?
It is being streamed to the public.
Okay, thanks.
All right, so now we're down, an executive session will be held, which is 2 items. Discussion, consultation, legal advice with the town attorney, outside water counsel, and condemnation counsel regarding possible claims, proceedings and contract negotiations with Carefree regarding Cave Creek Water System that provides service to Carefree residents. Arizona Revised Statute 38-431.03, parens A, parens 3, and parens 4. And the second item we will be discussing in there will be discussion, consultation with and legal advice with the town attorney regarding the employment contract agreement between the town and the town manager, and that's Arizona Revised Statute 38-431.03, parens A, parens 1, parens 3. And we're going to need a motion, and all you folks watching, we're going to go off and do this thing telephonically, as I understand it. So, and we'll come back when we're done with that and actually adjourn this meeting at that point. But do we have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
All in favor?
All right.
Okay. All right, folks. How do we go? What do you want me to do now?
Leave.
Huh? I've got it right here. But this is still, yeah. And while they're headed that way.
Is this the time to phone in?
Hi, Susan. Well, I guess